Hi everybody. I wanted to talk today about the shadow self, or the idea that everybody has a dark side, and what inspired me to discuss this topic was just a general thing that I noticed a lot of the time when you start talking about narcissism or psychopathy with people, or you start complaining about people's dark side, or talking about how selfish people are, or egocentric, whatnot. Some people will look at you blankly and say, well, everybody has a dark side. Or they'll say something like, oh, well, everybody has a blackness in them. Or everybody is a bit of a sociopath, sometimes even. And I think it's very important that people that were victimized or targeted as people address that. Because it's very painful to hear that. People say that. If you've ever been through narcissistic abuse. And the reason why it's painful is because you can't convey the full scope of the narcissist's depravity unless they killed somebody. Unless there's a body. Unless there is something very extreme that happened to the victim or the person that received the demon consciousness of the narcissist. So a really good example would be the case of psychopathic killers. The story that came to my mind is the story of Sheila Eddy and Rachel Shove. If you don't know about them, then you should Google the story. But these people, I can't even call them people, were a perfect example of like Hitler and his willing executioner. So there was a psychopathic friend who brainwashed her other friend to murder a third friend. And this third friend was a very bubbly, jovial, empathetic person. So unless you have that situation where the person literally dies at the hands of a psychopath, people will give you the talk about how everybody has a dark side, everybody has some egocentricity, and kind of brush it off as though it's nothing, without understanding the full scope of what the narcissist did to you. And it hurts a lot to hear that. Because, first of all, the lack of understanding from the other person that this person is a sadist and targeted you for many years, and created a trauma bond within you to make you be attracted to other sadists. That's all lost in that conversation, and it freaking sucks. But it's a reality. I'll also say that I do agree with the idea that everybody has a shadow, and I've only come to that after many years of contemplating this. There were times when I had narcissistic traits. There were times when I hurt people intentionally, or because I was afraid, or because I was scared, for various reasons of putting myself on the line for them, or being loved. And that's very real in people that have undergone this narcissistic abuse. You take on sometimes these demonic traits, and you're just as culpable, really, because it's all the same hurt. You hurt people. That's the bottom line. It doesn't matter where it's coming from. It doesn't matter why you did it. And at the end of the day, I've come to find demons are demons. You know, because the narcissist uses their demons more than the average person doesn't mean that you don't have a dark side and you don't have a shadow self. And the difference, though, and this is a very critical difference, is that you hold yourself accountable for that shadow self. So let's say you are in a room and you have a crush on a married man or a married woman. That shadow is there. That sinister motive is there. The difference, though, is that you don't act on it because you have an intervening light identity. You have an intervening sanctified identity. The narcissist does not have at all. That's a very critical difference. So while I agree with people when they say that we have a shadow, that we have to acknowledge our shadow, that sometimes we don't do what is right, sometimes we put blame on other people, sometimes we act in anger, and we act in jealousy sometimes. The fact is that everybody's accountable for that, except for the narcissist. So the argument is valid, but it's also not valid. Of course, it's hard to express this to people in conversation. I've tried many times to express this in conversation. But to a degree, admitting that you have a shadow self helps you in terms of your own self-development. If you can agree that you have a sinful mind sometimes, or that sinful mind does exist, and you don't push it away, push it out of your consciousness, then you can have a better understanding of who you are. You know what I mean? Sometimes you may be jealous of a friend. Sometimes you may be jealous of somebody's success. Sometimes you may be, you want to get back at somebody and you want to hurt them. That is all manifestations of the shadow self. Because the shadow is there to defend the ego and to express the ego and to express your pride. And victims of narcissism have repressed their ego, have repressed their pride, and have repressed their shadow for a very long time because it wasn't allowed. That's not part of the narcissist's game, for you to defend yourself, for you to express your ego, for you to express what you actually want, for you to reject their threats and their duress and their bullshit. You, and this is where a certain amount of accountability should be had, you completely destroyed your shadow self, your instinct of self-defense and your pride, to the point where another person has dominated you and has subdued you and has inserted their demons into yourself, and you've taken on these demons as though they're your own, even though they weren't yours all this time, because they've manipulated your shadow self, your shadow identity. Like they've projected all of their shadow traits onto you in moments when you were not really expressing your shadow self. A good example of this is when, let's say, a narcissist will ask you to change careers to get more money so that they can rob you in a divorce, let's say. And you are standing there and you say, okay, fine, I want to make more money so that we can both be happy, let's say. And 5 years later, when you lament about changing your career, these narcissists will turn around and say, oh, you're greedy, you're money hungry, that's why you changed your career. Own up to your responsibilities, you know. And because we do have a shadow and we do want money and we do have a dark side, we take on that idea as the absolute truth. And that's how they manipulate your dark consciousness against you. They make you think that you're a lot more sinister than you actually are. And so I think it's a good idea for people that come out of these toxic relationships to understand that yes, you do have a shadow, you do want money, you do have pride, you do have an ego. Sometimes you get jealous, sometimes you make mistakes, sometimes you don't fully admit to yourself or take accountability for your actions. Sometimes you run away from situations that you shouldn't run away from, and you hurt people because of your own ego, and that is absolutely factual. But the difference is that you hold yourself responsible for that mess, whereas the narcissist does not. And that is a huge, huge, huge difference. And until the day we die, we will have a shadow self. We need to learn how to manipulate it in a way that it doesn't destroy us or destroy other people. And when it does destroy other people, and when it does destroy us, we have to acknowledge it and take accountability and responsibility for having made a mistake, for having acted in a negative way, in a disgusting way. That's the only way, because it does exist. We're all human. I hope that makes sense. And by the way, we do control to the extent to which our shadow traits are expressed and repressed. And at the end of the day, it's on our conscience, whether we express them or repress them. It's on our conscience, because we do have a conscience. And that's what I would say to people that think that, that think that it's okay to just say, to just simplify it and say, oh, well, everybody has a dark side. Everybody does have a dark side, but at the end of the day, it's all on a continuum. And the narcissist's dark side is not supposed to be tolerated by anybody, because it's just runs loose, it runs free, and there's nothing stopping it. And if you engage them, and if you are in their space, you will be swallowed by that darkness. And that has been proven time and time again, and nobody is required to subject themselves to that sort of darkness over and over and over and over again, to the point where they can't escape it. This is exactly what happens to all narcissist victims. They overdo that idea that everybody has a dark side. So think about it. Self-defense is very important. Defense against other people's shadow is absolutely important and vital to your success and self-preservation in this world. Take care. Kisses.